The name of this series is Fallout 5 Raiders of New York, and so far we've seen a fair few references to New York. What we're missing are the Raiders. I've released 2 different faction videos already, one being a Brotherhood offshoot, and the other a pacifist playthrough faction. There's not really been a proper Raider faction yet, so let's rectify that today. In this video I will cover the Nuka World Raiders. I'll go over how they are formed, who they're made up of, and what they have to offer for the player. To start, let's talk about their history. If you've played through Fallout 4's Nuka World DLC, then you'll already know this faction's origin. In 2287, a trio of raider gangs held control of the old world theme park known as Nuka World. The Operators, Pack, and Disciples held an uneasy alliance for a short time, before infighting took over. Their strength would wax and wane over the next decade and a half, when they would encounter a new raider gang. This new gang asked all the raiders to join with them, or perish. But the Operators, Pack, and Disciples all held a strong sense of identity, and few were willing to leave ranks. As such, the Trespassing gang decided the only way to resolve the situation would be to wipe the gangs out. And so, a great battle was fought outside the walls of the park. The trio of Nuka World gangs in an uneasy alliance once again, in order to defend their home. But their effort was futile. The aggressor had brought a mighty weapon with them, one that not only killed most of their forces, but destroyed the majority of the park. There was one final call made. Any survivors could leave behind their old gang and join up with the victors, as they made their way to New York. Many took up this offer, but a few remained behind. These scant individuals were expected to die in the rubble of their home, and the invading gang didn't even bother to put them down before they left, instead leaving them to die from their wounds. But the spirit of these final few survivors wouldn't let this take place. They banded together, no longer being split into Disciples, Pack, and Operators, but becoming one gang, the Nuka World Raiders. Over the next 5 years, the gang would scrape out an existence, never being able to rebuild, and instead relying on a nomadic life. They would commit small-scale raids, always preferring a safe attack, as they struggled to recruit any new members. By 2307, the gang numbers no more than a dozen, and their leader makes a decision. They will return to Nuka World and establish a small outpost there, aiming to start recruiting others who befell a fate akin to their own, so that they can one day march into New York and enact vengeance. Once they reach Nuka World, things don't go to plan. Despite the small scale, their raids had attracted the attention of some Commonwealth goody two-shoes, and another fight began outside their former home. Things look like they're going poorly for the raiders, but their leader notices a newcomer has stumbled into the battlefield, and is clearly not a part of either side. She calls out to them to pick up a gun and help out, but whether or not they do, all comes down to your choice. This is how you as the player would encounter the Nuka World Raiders. At the very start of the game, you come across a conflict between two sides, and you have to choose who you will side with. Let's start by playing out the scenario where you choose to help the raiders first, then come back after to see what happens when you fight against them. The leader of the Nuka World Raiders is screaming and cursing, telling you to pick up a gun and shoot at the enemy. You do so and fight off the opposing faction, not wiping them out, but getting them to retreat from the conflict. Once the fighting is over, the leader of the raiders will thank you and ask you to join them. They're in need of recruits, and you seem to be able to handle yourself. Accept, and you become one of them. Your goals are then laid out. Ultimately, they're wanting to head to New York and take over Liberty Island, as that's where the raiders who defeated them initially are now stationed. But in the short term, the Nuka World Raiders are in desperate need of supplies and somewhere to rest up. Your initial quests will be structured around restoring a small part of Nuka World, getting better equipment for the gang, and recruiting a few of the locals. At this point I do want to talk a little bit about Nuka World itself. As I said earlier, the place has been mostly destroyed. The majority of the structures are in ruins, although a few buildings have remained mostly intact. The one of most importance being the arcade. So I love that there's a mini arcade in the Nuka World DLC, and I'd love it to stick around in my game. I'd see it as functioning in almost exactly the same way. Maybe change up a few of the prizes, but keep it as a fun little area where you can spend some time either relaxing and playing the games legitimately, or cheating like crazy to max out tickets earned. It's a fun distraction/side activity, and I think that's important. For the rest of the park, though, there's really not much left intact, so you need to make a meagre outpost of what remains. Once that's completed, the NWR will start heading towards NYC. On the way, you'll have to decide which factions you can turn to your side and which have to be destroyed. For the most part, it would just be other raiders you'd be able to confederate, and at least a few other factions would need to be wiped out. As you advance with the NWR, they will start getting more and more outposts. However, their nomadic nature means that settlement building won't be a priority. You'll get areas built up with the basics to survive, but the gang isn't interested in having a big fortress until they reach the endgame. That endgame, of course, being the assault on Liberty Island. The Nuka World Raiders want revenge on those who tried to wipe them out. They want to be in charge again, and they're more than happy to kill the top dogs to make that happen. Once you have become a major player in the Wasteland, the leader of the gang will approach you, and say that she's ready to lead everyone to the final fight. Cue climactic giant endgame battle, where you and a host of raiders take a multi-stage assault on Liberty Island. Win the battle, and you can place your gang on top. The Nuka World Raiders have won, and victory is yours. But what if you didn't help out the Nuka World Raiders at the start of the game? Or what if you sided against them? Well, they die. At the start of a game, if you don't help them out, then the raiders lose the initial conflict, and the handful of members they have left would be killed. The other faction would celebrate their victory and offer you some assistance, regardless of whether you fought or not. And in a future video, I'll go over more of what happens in this scenario, but you'll have to subscribe for that one. One final note I should mention is that you'd be able to leave the gang behind at any time if you did help them out. While they want you to assist them, there's nothing to stop you just walking away and joining up with another faction. Although this could lead you to having to decide what to do with your former gang later down the road. For now, we should take a closer look at a few of the interesting characters that make up the Nuka World Raiders. First is Erin, the leader of the gang. She fought in the initial conflict that saw the destruction of the Pack, Operators and Disciples. From the rubble, she forged a new gang with the survivors, and has led them ever since. Erin is a strong and resolute leader, but also a vicious and cruel raider. She cares deeply about those in the gang, but tends to view anyone else as a potential enemy. When threatened, she'll fight tooth and claw, and doesn't blink at violence, happily embracing it as the easiest way to solve any issues that arise. Due to the small size of a gang, she rarely sends them out for straight-on attacks, preferring to train up her troops as assassins, able to take out the enemy quickly, and without endangering themselves. Sneak attacks followed up by savage brutality fit perfectly to match with her volatile personality. She's far from the most savage person in the gang though. That honour goes to Bones. This individual can barely be called human anymore. He's a sick person who feasts on human flesh and is excited by acts of depravity. Even for a boss as malicious as Erin, Bones makes her skin crawl. If it wasn't for his skill with a blade, somebody may have killed him by now, but no one dares, lest he catches them in the act. Nobody knows how exactly he ended up this way, if he was subjected to some strange Vault-Tec experiment, tortured by super mutants, or just lost his mind to the radiation. Whatever the reason, nobody's brave enough to ask. They all keep their distance, trying not to be noticed by the creature, lest they become his next meal. Bones wasn't recruited to the gang so much as he just showed up one day. It was discussed if they should just kill him to be on the safe side, but their next battle proved that he was far more valuable to have sticking around. He could easily turn the tide of a fight, and if he fell, well, wouldn't be something to cry over. On the less savage side, but perhaps not as much as appearances would suggest, is Liz. She's been with the Raiders for a long time. Despite not looking like a typical Raider, and even shying away from fights, her sadistic side shines through in her experiments. She will torture and toy with any wasteland creature, yearning to discover new toxins or more effective interrogation techniques. Her dark activities do help out the Raiders, providing them with poison for their blades, knowledge of the weakest defended settlements, and potential future concoctions with unlimited potential. Unlike most Raiders, Liz also shows no desire to be in charge. As long as she is provided with materials and a place to work, her loyalty is unbreakable, but if Erin fails to provide, well, maybe she'd be open to somebody else taking control of the game. After all, it matters not how the materials arrive, just that they are there for her to use. As with all of my factions, there will be a variety of uniques and faction-related equipment to acquire, be it from joining them or destroying them. The first of these items will be the unique handmade rifle, Splatter Solver. Remember back in Fallout 4, where the Nuka DLC had 2 ways to acquire effectively the exact same weapon? Both the Problem Solver and Splatter Cannon were handmade rifles with the Furious effect. I've elected to fix this by having one weapon of this sort, actually making it a unique this time around. A Furious handmade is a very strong weapon, and as such will be available through a mid to late game side quest with the Nuka World Raiders. Another returning item from Fallout 4 would be poisoned caltrops. These nasty little spikes are a favourite of Liz's, and she'll make sure you're topped up with a good amount, and may even teach you how to make them if you show an interest in her work. Her research also will bring out some new items to test out. I'd want Liz to have a whole side quest series based around creating interesting potions and poisons. The player will be sent out to find a strange plant, or perhaps kill a creature and take a body part from it. Return the item and have Liz create a concoction for you to use. These items could be paralytic poisons you can apply to melee weapons, or invigorating drinks which let you run faster, or even salves to apply to your skin and make it tougher. These potions would have to be crafted by Liz every time, but once you've completed the quest for each concoction, you simply need to gather the ingredients, bring them to base, and she'll whip up another one of the same. Finally, in faction-specific items, we have a unique, the Horde Master's Jacket. This operator-style chest piece would not only provide significant protection, but also show that you mean business. Increase success chance for speech checks, and earn 10% more caps from quest rewards. Erin is wearing this item, so it can be looted from her corpse real early on. And there we have the first true Raider faction of my game. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and do of course leave a like if you want this series to continue. There are plenty more factions to talk about, and I also want to go in depth on equipment, discuss how I'd make a leveling system work, and introduce a mercenary system to the game. If that sounds good to you, make sure you're subscribed, and keep an eye out for future episodes in the series. As always, thanks for watching. Sarge out.